Two Chairs No Waiting, episode number 830, Barney's Replacement. Two Chairs No Waiting is brought to you by the folks over at weaversdepartmentstore.com. Drop by, lots of new and returning items. They got brand new Mayberry Cruise t-shirts. That's right, Mayberry Cruise. The ship looks like a big squad car. Go and check it out. If you've been on the Mayberry Cruise or might be wanting to go, pick you up a t-shirt. While you're there, you might want to pick up a 1 3 or 4/3 scale squad car. It's Andy Griffith Show squad car that's big. And you might want to pick up the new Floyd's Barbershop t-shirt, my favorite t-shirt. Head over to weaversdepartmentstore.com and check it out. Two Chairs No Waiting is also brought to you by donations from listeners like you. Our executive producer is Paul Mulick. So I want to thank Paul. Paul is a Patreon over at patron.com. So you can do that too if you'd like to donate $1 or $2 or $5 or $1,000 every episode. You can go there and set it up. It's great. So thank you to Paul for helping us out. He's often helping us out with trivia and stuff. Tonight, though, he's not going to be helping us out with trivia. We're going to do trivia. As I said, the show's called Barney's Replacement. So we'll be going over the episode Barney's Replacement from the Andy Griffith Show, season 2, episode 2. So we'll be going over that, and we're gonna skip things around just a little bit. First, I'm going to remind you about the episode. Okay, so the episode, if you remember, Barney's pride gets the best of him when Bob Rogers, a booksmart state attorney that's just out of college and stuff, and never done any police work, he's sent to Mayberry to get some law enforcement expertise. If you remember, that's some experience in hands-on law enforcement, not just book learning. Convinced that Andy is out to replace him, Barney beats him to the punch and resigns. And he enters into the business world, going door to door as a salesman. Andy tricks Barney into rejoining the force by showing him that Bob Rogers, doesn't really have the mettle to take on the job. So that's hopefully reminding you about what Barney's Replacement's about. So I thought this would be fun to do a little bit different than we usually do. I'm going to go over some trivia questions first. I'm not going to give you the answers. We'll go back and do those at the end of the episode. I'm going to give you the trivia. Then I'm going to go through the episodes, go through a good summary of the episode, and then do some odd facts known by a few, and then we'll hit the answers. How about that? Y'all ready? All right, so get out your pencils and your paper if you want to write them down, or if you don't have to do that. But we're going to start with some trivia. Now, this trivia is all about the episode Barney's Replacement. Now, it's cheating if you go do this, but you can find these trivia questions over on MeTV. MeTV actually came up with these questions, and I am stealing them, but I'm giving them credit. So there'll be links in the show notes where you can go and take the quiz again if you'd like to. But it's at MeTV. It's called the Daily Andy Griffith Show Quiz, Barney's Replacement. Okay, so we're going to go through those questions. So question number 1, it's going to be multiple choice. I'm going to give you some chances. We got 10 questions, but I'm not going to give you the answers. And I'm going to read them quickly. Then we're going to move on. We're not going to spend a lot of time on them. All right, if you're ready. When the episode opens, Barney is taking too seriously his role in charge of what? When the episode opens, Barney's taking too seriously his role in charge of what? The filing cabinet, the bulletin board, or jail cell maintenance? Okay, mark down your answer. Andy, number 2, Andy sees Opie off to school, telling him to do a good day's work, and does he tell him to act like somebody, keep your chin up, or give him what for? Question number 3. There's 10 questions, by the way. What kind of sign has Barney failed to secure? What did he fail to secure? A pedestrian crossing sign, a speed limit sign, or a stop sign? What did he fail to secure? Question number 4. I know I'm running through them quick, but remember, we're going to go over the answers at the end of the show. Question number 4. What's the name of the man from the state attorney's office? Surely you'll get this. Was his name Bill Reddick, Was it Barry Reagan or Bob Rogers? If you missed that one, you weren't even listening to me earlier. Question number 5. This is a quote. It is, a wink is as good as a nod to a blank. A wink is as good as a nod to a, is it a hit dog, a blind mule, or a thorny bush? Question number 6. The new deputy correctly predicts a case of what in Mayberry? Okay, what did he predict a case of using his board? Was it domestic violence, an armed robbery, or grand theft auto? What did he predict? All right, number 7. Barney picks up a new job. What does he sell? Was he selling insurance, vacuums, or knives? Question number 8. I'm running through these fast. Woo, your heads are spinning. Emma says Barney formerly arrested her for which crime? Emma says Barney formerly arrested her for which crime? Was it bootlegging, money laundering, or jaywalking? Number 9. How many sales does Barney actually make? Do he make 2, 1, or none? 0, none. All right. And number 10, the final question. Barney is arrested for violating which statute? Was it the Green River Ordinance, the Blue Valley Act, or the Palooka Lake Mandate? Ooh. All right. So there you go. So there is our trivia questions for this week's episode, Barney's Replacement. How did you do? We'll find out at the end of the episode. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. Now, we're going to go now into actually reviewing the actual episode of the Andy Griffith Show and what it's all about. And in this episode, we start off, Andy and Barney are in the courthouse, and Andy's checking the mail and realizing they've got a new wanted poster, and they go over and start looking at the wanted posters on the wall. This is my online chapter is called "Who's Been Messing Up the Bulletin Board?" And this episode, Barney's Replacement, is where that quote comes from. That is the chapter name. Who's been messing up the bulletin board? So Barney goes over to the bulletin board and looking at it with Andy, and Andy basically realizes, there's a lot of stuff on this bulletin board that's old. That needs to be taken off. And Barney's like, well, I like to wait on the official verification. I'll just wait on the official verification until he takes it down. Well, he works himself all up about that, and to the point where, and Andy's really not giving him a hard time, but he runs over and rips it off the board and says, "There, are you fine?" He puts it in the filing cabinet. "Are you happy now? Are you happy? You don't have to bite my head off." Andy just kind of looks flabbergasted, kind of grinning. Barney goes out the door to go out and sweep the sidewalk because he's so upset. And Opie comes in. "Paul, what's wrong with Barney?" "Oh, he's just got something. He's working out." And Opie said, "Well, he's sweeping all the way down the street." So Andy begins to talk to Opie. Now, this was one of our trivia questions we just went through. He tells Opie to go on off to school, and what does he tell him? Act like somebody. There's the answer to our trivia question. That's why I did the trivia first, so I wouldn't give away all the answers. So Andy and Barney are riding down the street doing patrol, and they pull to a stop, and Andy's kind of looking around. He goes, "Oh, see, that stop sign is still not been tacked back up." And Barney's like, Are you making fun of me? I'll do it when the work order comes in from the county." And he said, "It just takes a nail. You can just do it." He said, "I'd rather wait on the work order." Anyway, so basically Andy's giving him a hard time. Barney then goes and parks, and Andy didn't like the way he parked, and Barney's upset. You don't like the way I park. You don't like the way I drive. You don't like the way I keep the bulletin board. You don't like, so he's all frustrated. Well, they walk in, and that's when they first meet Bob Rogers. Bob Rogers is from the state attorney's office, and he's down sent down by them to learn from Andy and Barney about how real sheriff work, because all of his work is book learning. And Andy tells him, he said, well, we're all for book learning. That's good. But yeah, this will probably be a good experience. Well, Barney is seeing this when had Andy is criticizing him all day long about stuff. So he is convinced that Andy has brought in a replacement. And he's talking to Thelma Lou about it over at her house. And he's completely convinced that Andy must have brought this new guy in to replace him, because Andy's not been happy with his work and everything. And Thelma Lou's like, Barney, no, that wouldn't happen. He said, he's wanting me to train him up to replace me. He said, I'm not going to do it. So he decides he won't do it. So he goes back in the next morning, and Bob Rogers is dressed in a deputy uniform and is there ready to go, looking at the bulletin board and talking to him and trying to get Barney to tell him stuff. He said, well, I might tell you later. And, we'll see. He said, well, I did find in the handbook here how to handle taking care of the bulletin boards and stuff, how you're supposed to handle wanted posters. And of course, Barney acts like he knew about it when he didn't. He obviously did not know about this, because Andy comes in and looks at it and says, wow, that's a great, we could have really used that yesterday when we were talking about that wanted poster that it should have been taken down. We could have really used that, Barney. So again, Barney's feeling like he's being dissed, I guess. He's being picked on about not being a good deputy. So later, Bob Rogers is out looking in the squad car, and he's looking at trying to get familiar with the equipment. Barney says, well, slide over and let me in, and I'll tell you how this works. He says, that's a two-way radio right there. And you pick this up and you talk in it, and you put it back and you listen up here. And that's how it works. That was his description of how the two-way police radio works. And so then they notice, Bob Rogers says, what's this switch right here? Well, it's a toggle switch for turning on the siren. So Barney says, well, you take your index finger and you flip it up, and on she goes. And then when you want to turn it off, you click it down. Oh, and he clicks it down, it doesn't go off. So something's wrong. The siren is stuck. They have to jump out of the car. They go around the front, pop the hood. They're trying to figure out, why is this thing yelling and screaming? And Andy comes up. What's wrong, Barney? He said, well, the siren's stuck. Go get me a screwdriver and a pair of pliers. And Bob Rogers said, no, you don't have to do that. So he says, can I borrow that? And he takes something out of Barney's pocket, probably a pen. I think it was an ink pen. And he taps on the solenoid, and it stops. And so Barney once again feels like he was inadequate, and he has to shoo all the people away that were listening to the siren go off. He comes in. Bob Rogers has made a chart. He made a chart of all the crimes and everything that's been happening in Mayberry over the last several years, and using it to kind of predict the future. So he predicts the future that there's going to be a case of domestic violence. I believe it's wife beating is what he actually says. And they're like, oh, that's crazy. We don't put a lot of stock in that kind of thing. Barney says, yeah, that can't work. You can't judge crime on a chart. And so they're kind of laughing about it a little bit and saying it's interesting, but I just don't see how that'd work. That's you got your head in the clouds. Well, the phone rings. Andy answers it, and what do you know? Somebody had just given their wife a what for, which was not good. And so Barney was going to go and figure it out, and Andy says, wait a minute now, this was, Bob, he came up with this idea. I think he probably ought to handle it. So he makes Barney give him the keys to the squad car, and Bob goes off to solve this issue. And of course, again, Barney is feeling like he's not adequate. So he goes over to Thelma Lou's that night, and they're talking again. He said, I'm telling you, he's going to get rid of me. And Thelma Lou, she said, he's too good a friend. He'd never do that to you. And Barney's like, well, he is. Andy is too good of a friend. He probably won't do that, but I'm going to walk away, because if Barney Fife's not wanted somewhere, he's not going to stay. So he makes a decision based on his belief that Andy's trying to get rid of him, that he's going to quit the force. So he heads in the office the next day and he's turning in all of his equipment. Andy's trying to talk him out of it, saying, why are you doing it? But Barney says, well, you know, one of these days, Thelma, Lou, and I are going to get married, and women, they worry about men that are in law enforcement. I need to have a career that's not so concerning like this, where I could leave and not come back that day. It's basically, so Andy believes him. And Barney goes off and he gets a job, another one of the trivia questions, as a vacuum cleaner salesman. And he's not doing a very good job, because when people come to the door, like he goes to Clara's, and Clara comes to the door and says, hey, Barney, what are you doing? He said, I'd like to interest you in a vacuum cleaner. She says, what'd you do, Barney? Did you lose a bet? I haven't got time to mess with this, Barney. I got things to do. So she won't buy one from him. And he leaves. He has to leave. So then he goes over to Emma's house, Emma Watson's or Emma Brand's. I'm not sure which. I can't remember in this episode. But he goes to Emma's, and Emma's saying, Barney, where's your uniform? I told you, Emma, I'm not a deputy anymore. Not a deputy? Not a deputy? Well, you a lot of nerve arresting me if you're not a deputy. But she does tell him she likes him better in his uniform. So she also mentions that he shouldn't have arrested her for jaywalking, another one of our trivia questions, if you're not a deputy. Barney is pretty dejected at this point, and he's walking through town carrying his vacuum cleaner and stuff, and he sees Andy. So he goes over and says, hey, Andy, how you doing? And they begin to talk, and Barney is telling how good he's doing. And he says, let me see your book there, see how you've been doing. And there's no sales in it. And Barney then pretends it's his second book. He's already sold a whole book. Well, Andy's concerned, so he ends up going over to Thelma Lou's to talk to her, and she tells him what had happened. And she said, I can't believe you, Andy, that you believed that. He said, well, he convinced me. I believed him. Well, what are you going to do? He says, well, I'm going to have to come up with some way to get him back on the force. So he heads over to the courthouse, and Bob Rogers comes out and is reporting that he's written some tickets and things like that. And he says, well, by the way, I saw your friend Fife, and did you issue him the license to be a door-to-door salesman? And he said, no. Well, I understand if you don't want to cause a problem here, but, because he's your friend, but, and Andy's like, well, oh, no. We can't have people breaking the Green River Ordinance, another one of our trivia questions. You go on over there and get Fife. You go arrest him. And he brings Barney back into the courthouse, towing his vacuum cleaner, and puts him in the jail cell for breaking the Green River Ordinance, and begins to say, well, we hadn't really enforced that. Andy does. He says, well, if you don't enforce these laws, you've got yourself an unbalanced chart. If you have an unbalanced chart, it'll throw your whole chart off. And that just makes Barney kind of lose it. He says, is that what I am? Just a dot on a chart? That's not what this law enforcement's about. It's people. I'm a person. And he goes, Andy, I want to take back my resignation. And I can't believe this, that you're doing this. And then Andy has his uniform and everything already ready, brings it right over to Barney. And Barney says, what's this? He said, well, it's your uniform. And basically Barney says, well, you better gird your loins, boy, talking to Bob Rogers. And he goes into the back room to change. And Andy says, well, he is right. And Bob says, yeah, I understand. So he learns something from this. And the epilogue is Barney standing out front of the courthouse writing a ticket for a car that's parked right outside the courthouse. And it turns out it's Bob Rogers. And he says, well, this location is designated for police officers. He said, well, I am a deputy. He said, not anymore. You resigned this morning. And basically he takes it back from him. He said, no, I'm just trying to make a point. So Bob rides off, and we get that wonderful shot of Barney where they're kind of shooting from a very low camera angle up across the street, up to where you see the top of the courthouse, even the whole street. And Barney walks across with Andy in the background, watching Barney walk, and they're playing the Barney music as he does so. And that is the end of the episode. End of the episode. So there you go. Hopefully y'all enjoyed that. Now, those were I hit several of the trivia questions. We got others, I believe, that we have not hit, but we will hit those up before the end of the episode. So I'll be able to give you all the information. All right. So odd facts known by few. At the beginning of this episode, I mentioned there is a conversation going on about the bulletin board there at the courthouse. Okay. So the bulletin board at the courthouse, there is a poster that you can see on there that is the one in question that Andy's talking to Barney about, that the man had been arrested and it's been on the news and everything. Okay, so here's what it says. The first wanted poster. In frustration, Barney files that poster. He pulls it off of the bulletin board, as I mentioned earlier, and he files it in the filing cabinet. Okay, so, but then just in the next scene where we have Bob Rogers, when he comes in and he starts to be a deputy, and they're looking at the bulletin board just a little bit later, that same poster is still there. That poster's there. Okay, so there's a continuity error. You can see the exact same poster still hanging on the bulletin board, even though Barney ripped it off and put it in the filing cabinet just a few minutes earlier in the episode. So watch for that. That's kind of cool. So that probably means they shot this scene with Bob Rogers and Barney before they shot the one where Barney took it off the wall. He took it off. Okay. So that's probably what happened. Anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. Although Barney gets mad and resigns from the force several times before he finally resigns and moves to Raleigh in the 5th season, this is the only time that Barney actually ever spends any time away from the force. In other words, he resigns and then spends some time away. You know, the other times, like in Citizen's Arrest and stuff, he was just in the jail cell. He never went anywhere, and he's still dressed in his uniform. This is one of the very few episodes where we actually see Barney doing stuff outside of police work. So he was doing a salesman. So that's a little odd fact known by a few. Barney mentions during this episode, one of the reasons he's going to resign from the force is that he and Thelma Lou are going to get hitched soon. Well, that never really came about until Return to Mayberry, the movie. It's notable that the writers had their union in mind, even in season 2, episode 2 of the Andy Griffith Show. Let's see. When Barney is writing out the ticket for Bob illegally parking there at the end of the episode that we were just talking about, he writes out a ticket for him, and then he tears up that ticket. So he actually tears it up. I don't know if I don't have a screenshot for that, but he tears it up, and Barney actually flicks it on the ground. So he tears it up and then flicks it on the ground. Well, obviously that is littering, and he's even given tickets to Alan Melvin's character in episodes where he had done stuff like that. So anyway, just a little note. Or you could say there might be a trash can right there that Barney flicked it into. You never know. You can't see because there's a car standing there. I don't know. It does drive off. I guess we could look and see, but let's see. I guess there's not a trash can, because when you look at the long shot, there is no trash can. So he just threw the paper right there on the ground. Barney, what are you doing? All right. Even though Barney refers to the deputy Bob as son during the segment, well, all right, son. It is constantly condescending to him as a rookie. He's always being condescending. And the actor who portrayed Bob is only 1 year younger than Don. So even though Bob was supposed to have just been out of college, he was at the state attorney's office, had no real experience in law enforcement, or maybe he was just a new hire at the attorney's office, but he was only a year younger than Don Knotts. There you go. Now let's see. On Barney's first attempt at selling the vacuum cleaners at Clara's house, he walks up to Clara's house, and if you really watch closely during the episode, you would actually see there's a reflector being used to light Don on the porch, and you really can't see it in the screenshots I took, but if you watch the episode, you will see the lighting come in and reflect on him as he gets up onto the porch, because it's pretty dark when he's getting up on the porch, and they're reflecting light or of some type up on the porch. So watch for that. That's another little odd fact for you to watch. When the siren won't turn off, remember when that happens, the siren wouldn't turn off. He was showing Bob Rogers how to make the sirens work and all that kind of stuff. When it won't turn off, a lady walks up to the squad car carrying a bag, a grocery bag. And if you look really closely, it's a black lady. If you look really closely, you can actually see, and I'm going to zoom in on this if you're watching the video version. I'm going to try to zoom in. You can actually see the bag says Hollywood on it. You see that? It says Hollywood on the bag. It's only for a few moments in the scene, but you can definitely see it. You can definitely see it when that happens, and then it's gone. You know, she's kind of covering it up most of the time, but you can literally see that it says Hollywood on the paper bag that she's carrying with groceries. So check that out too. The license plate on the front of Bob Rogers' car is the license plate that we see on the squad car from time to time. It is the JL327. It's not JL327. It's the DC269 squad car tag that's on the front of Bob Rogers' car. So you'll see it there. You'll also see that same plate used on other episodes. It's on Roger Courtney's car in the episode The Club Men. The Club Men, when Barney and Andy are wanting to join that club. It's his tag number as well. So there you go. Odd facts known by few, guys. Okay, so when Bob Rogers from the state attorney's office is explaining the Green River Ordinance to Andy, he actually says it was enacted in 1924, but it was actually enacted in November the 16th, 1931. The town of Green River, Wyoming, with a population of a little more than 3,000 people, deemed that, quote, an emergency exists, end quote, and passed and approved an ordinance called 175 that prohibited door-to-door selling. William Evers was the mayor of Green River at the time, and under this ordinance, the salesman must be invited into a home of a resident before he can knock on the door and attempt to peddle his wares. So you had to invite the door-to-door salesman to come and knock on your door before it would be legal for him to be able to knock on your door. So that's what basically the Green River Ordinance was. So there you go. So there's several times during the episode you'll see the squad car parked near, not necessarily right in front of, but very near the fire hydrant. And so there's a fire hydrant. If you're coming out the front door of the courthouse, there's a fire hydrant just to the, coming out the door would be to the right of of a pole. There's a pole out there, and that fire hydrant moves around. So you can definitely see the fire hydrant when they pull over and get out. When Barney and Andy pull over, I think is when you can actually see it. But then at the end of the episode, there is no fire hydrant there. It's just not there anymore. When Barney's doing his walk across the street, the fire hydrant's gone. But there was a fire hydrant just to the right side, if you're looking at it, it'd be towards Floyd's. There was a fire hydrant there, and there is no fire hydrant at all in that wall. So it was some kind of a prop that they would use to move the fire hydrant around. Just so you know, watch for that. So yeah, that's kind of cool. It moves around. Let's see. Finally, the actor who played Bob Rogers, our state attorney fella, there's a coincidence with him. His name is Mark Miller. He played Bob Rogers. He played the role of Roger in a 1959 episode of The Twilight Zone that was entitled I Dream of Jeannie. And that particular episode starred the actor Howard Morris, Ernest E. Bass. And Mark Miller, later guest starred as Wild Bill Barrows in a television show, I Dream of Jeannie, in 1965, in an episode called Ride-'em Astronaut. So there's a connection with I Dream of Jeannie from Twilight Zone, the Andy Griffith Show with Howard Morris on there with him, and then later he was in I Dream of Jeannie itself, the actual TV series, in an episode called Ride-'em Astronaut. There you go. All right. Well, odd facts known by few. There you go. So how about that? Did y'all know some of that stuff? Did y'all know that? So I should tell you some stuff about this episode that I skipped over. It was the second episode of season 2. It was filmed as it would have been the first episode. It was the 33rd episode filmed of the Andy Griffith Show, but it was aired as the 34th. So it was the first episode they actually filmed for season 2, but they aired it second and used the Opie episode first. The original air date was October the 9th, 1961. The writers were Jack Ellison and Charles Stewart, and the director, Bob Sweeney himself. All right, guys, so let's go back to our trivia questions. So you've had time to think about them. I've been able to give them to you as we went through. So let's go through the episode trivia questions for this particular episode. So if you didn't get a chance, you got another chance real quick as I'm reading through these. But here we go. When the episode opens, Barney is taking too seriously his role in charge of what? The bulletin board. Who's been messing up the bulletin board? That's right. All right. Andy sees Opie off to school, telling him to do a good day's work and act like somebody. What kind of sign has Barney failed to secure? We talked about it during the episode, so you should have known it by now. The stop sign. You forgot. He had not nailed up the stop sign yet. What's the name of the man from the state attorney's office? Well, we told you that before you even did the trivia, so surely you got this one. It was Bob Rogers. A wink's as good as a nod to that's to a blind mule. I didn't even remember that in this episode, but I've heard that my whole life. I live in the South. A new deputy correctly predicts, or the new one, what kind of case? A case of what? Well, we already know is domestic violence. That's what it was. So number 7, Barney picks up a new job, and what's he selling? He sells vacuum cleaners. But he don't sell any. So I guess he didn't sell anything. I don't know. Emma says Barney formerly arrested her for what crime? He got a lot of nerve arresting me. You're not a deputy. It was jaywalking. How many sales does Barney make? We just said none. He didn't make any. And number 10, Barney is arrested for violating what statute? The Green River Ordinance. So there you go, guys. There is our answers to all of our trivia. Thank you to MeTV for the questions and the answers. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. It's a lot of fun to me. I enjoy going through these episodes and just remembering all that happened during the show. Folks, I would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed the show, if you like the trivia, whatever, I'd love to hear from you. Did you like me doing the trivia and then going back? I thought I'd try something different. Shake it up a little. It may confuse everybody. I don't know. But guys, thanks. I really appreciate you being here. I'd love to hear from you. You can give me a call at 888-684-8415. You can email me at floyd@imayberry.com or drop by over at twochairsnowaiting.com and leave me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Guys, thanks for being here. I hope you're going to try to make it out to one of the Mayberry events this year. Head over to imayberry.com and go to the event calendar for all the details. Sign up for the Weavers newsletter so you don't miss anything there as well. And we'll see you back here next week on Two Chairs. Good night, everybody.